Snow falls over St. Petersburg like silent ash. The winter wind whispers through the gilded windows of the Winter Palace. Once this empire bowed to kings and queens. Once the Romanovs ruled a sixth of the world. And at the heart of this fading glory stood a woman history would judge harshly, a wife, a mother, and a Tsarina trapped between love and catastrophe. Her name was Empress Alexandra Feodorovna, the last Tsarina of Russia. A queen not undone by armies, but by belief, fear, and the one man she trusted more than her own nation, Grigory Rasputin. Alexandra was born a German princess, raised in courts of elegance and discipline. But she loved not power. She loved with her whole heart. When she met Nicholas Romanov, heir to the Russian Empire, it was a love that defied kingdoms. He promised her the world, and she promised him her soul. She was shy, reserved, and deeply religious, finding the boisterous Russian court overwhelming. But in Nicholas she found her anchor. When he became Tsar Nicholas II, she became Tsarina Alexandra Feodorovna of Russia. With crowns on their heads and hope in their hearts, they truly believed their love could rule an empire. But as history would prove time and again, love alone cannot stop the tide of change. The world celebrated when Alexandra finally gave birth to a son, Alexei, the long-awaited heir to the throne. After 4 daughters, the future of the dynasty seemed secure. But that joy shattered in an instant. The baby boy, Alexei, suffered from hemophilia, a terrible inherited blood disease passed down through Alexandra's side of the family. A simple fall, a minor cut, a small bruise could trigger uncontrollable bleeding and kill him. The empire did not know. The palace hid the secret in fear, terrified of the instability it would cause. Imagine the constant terror Alexandra lived with. Night after night she knelt beside her son's bed, praying, begging, pleading with God to save him. She watched him scream in agony from internal bleeding that doctors were powerless to stop. And when modern medicine failed her, she turned to a force that existed beyond it. Mysticism. It was into this world of desperation that a wandering Siberian mystic named Grigory Rasputin arrived. He was a peasant, with wild eyes, a hypnotic voice, and a reputation for whispered prayers and miraculous healings. To the Russian elite, he was uncouth, a charlatan. But when young Alexei nearly died from another severe bleeding episode, the doctors gave up all hope. In a panic, Alexandra called for Rasputin. He prayed over the boy, and the bleeding stopped. To Alexandra, it was a miracle. He was a holy man sent by heaven itself. To the rest of Russia, he was a devil in holy clothes, a corrupting influence on the imperial family. Ministers warned her. Nobles begged her to send him away. The nation whispered in taverns and bread lines, "The Tsarina has fallen under a sorcerer's spell." But Alexandra refused to listen. She saw only one simple, undeniable truth. Where Rasputin was, her son lived. And for a mother consumed by fear, that was more than enough. While Alexandra put her faith in Rasputin, the Russian Empire was rotting from the inside out. World War I was bleeding the country dry, sending millions of men to their deaths on the front lines. Back home, hunger gnawed at the poor. Cities were freezing with no fuel for warmth. Revolution stirred in the streets like dark storm clouds gathering on the horizon, and the whispers against the royal family grew into a furious roar. Down with the Tsar! Down with the German Tsarina! Down with the demon monk! Alexandra's reliance on Rasputin became a symbol of everything that was wrong with the regime. When Rasputin was finally murdered by a group of desperate nobles in a last-ditch effort to save the monarchy, it was already far too late. The damage was done. The trust was broken. The revolution was inevitable. In 1917, the centuries-old empire fell. The Romanovs were arrested, stripped of their titles, their jewels, and their power. Gone were the magnificent palaces. Gone were the thousands of servants. Gone was the crown. But in the face of utter ruin, Alexandra held on to the one thing that had always mattered most to her family. In exile, she prayed constantly. She held her children close, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy, teaching them lessons and reading to them. She whispered words of hope, even as the world they knew turned its back on them completely. July 19th, 1918. A dark, damp basement in the city of Ekaterinburg. The Romanov family was woken in the middle of the night and told they were being moved for their own safety. Instead, they were led downstairs. Soldiers entered the room, holding rifles. Alexandra stood beside Nicholas. Her 4 daughters, Olga, Tatiana, Maria, and Anastasia, clutched each other. Young Alexei, too weak to stand, sat on a chair, confused and trembling. There were no last speeches. There was no royal mercy. A command was shouted. Then a storm of gunfire filled the small room. And then, silence. The last Tsarina of Russia fell not on a throne, but on a cold, blood-stained basement floor, beside her husband and her 5 children. The Romanov dynasty, which had ruled for over 300 years, ended in that brutal, violent moment. So, was Alexandra a villain, a sorceress's puppet? Or was she simply a mother trying desperately to save her son, a devoted wife trying to support her king, and a queen drowning in a world she never truly understood? She loved too fiercely. She trusted too deeply. And history, in its cruel and unforgiving way, punished her for it. She was a queen, destroyed not by greed or lust for power, but by fear, by love, and by a fate she could not escape. She wore a crown of diamonds but carried a heart full of fear. If the tragedy of Empress Alexandra moved you, subscribe and uncover the untold stories of queens who loved, fought, and fell with their empires. Thanks for watching.